Welcome to my top 101 comics of 2025, and before you can say it, let me. This list is wrong, because all lists are wrong. Art is a subjective experience, and to take all those experiences and rank them, it's going to lead to a lot of differing opinion, and that's okay. I know there'll be comics on here that I love that you hate, books that you love that I didn't rank, and that's okay. So the question then becomes, well, why do this? Well, I started doing this in article form at geekcastradio.com a number of years ago. This is the first time I'm ever doing it in video format. And the reason for that was because it pushed me to read comics I would otherwise skip. If I did a top 100 list of just 50 Marvel and 50 DC, that'd be really hard to do and also very boring. Now the comics that I used to skip over are often my favorite of the year. Beyond that, though, I like to try to encompass the entire year that was in comics within one list, to represent all the nooks and crannies of this medium the best I can, and I keep that in mind when putting this list together. But ultimately, the biggest reason I do this is because I love recommending comics. It's where the name Comic Concierge comes from. What a better way to do that than over 100 comics that have recently come out that you can peruse through. My hope is that everyone that either watches this video, reads the list at geekcastradio.com, will walk away with one or two books that they never heard about that they're now interested in. If that happens, that's a win. So if you love a book and it doesn't make this list, let me know. I'm all about getting more recommendations. With that said, I want to go over my ranking and how I put this together, because comics are a lot harder to rank than movies and TV shows, because a movie is a movie, a TV show is a TV show, but comics are different. Also know I'm not the only one to ever do a list like this. Shout outs to Professor Thorgy. He loved his top 100 list back in the day. Clearly inspiration for what I'm doing. It'd be wrong for me not to give him his due. So with that said, this is how I'm putting this list together. First and foremost, all comics are eligible. So single issues, miniseries, graphic novels, yes, even manga, they're all included within this list. That includes books that are having an English release for the first time. There are going to be a few books in this list that technically came out a very long time ago, but this is the first time they have been adapted for English readers. So yes, I am including them. And lastly, I've had to read it. That's the most important, of course. And I'm only one person. I read a lot of comics, much more than most, but I don't read everything. A big reason this list is coming out much later than most end-of-year lists is because I do try to do my due diligence, catch up as much as I can, but ultimately, I gotta stop it at some place and cut it off. So that's it. That's my structure for putting these together. Try to keep it as simple as possible. With that said, let's get to the countdown. I'll be doing 4 videos, 25 comics in each, so I can try to get into why I like each comic without this video being 18 hours long. All right, let's look at pick number 101. And at 101, I have Space Ghost, published by Dynamite Comics. The current state of comics has a plethora of books that are based on classic Saturday morning cartoons. Some really good ones too, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, that have both been hugely successful and critically acclaimed. Others, not so much. I wanted to highlight Space Ghost though for a few reasons. For one, I've rather enjoyed it for the last few years, despite my only exposure to Space Ghost being the infamous Cartoon Network talk show that took a very different approach. This has the perfect tone. It never feels like you're reading something designed for a small child, but it also never gets overtly mature to the point of parody. David Pepose has a knack for that seen in other books like Speed Racer. Another big reason is the consistency in the art team and the quality. Dynamite can be very hit or miss when it comes to art, but Jonathan Lau is one of the best artists working for them currently and gives this book a consistent look that doesn't exist with most ongoings in today's world, including Marvel and DC. That consistent art team also includes colorist Andrew Dahlhaus, coverist Francesco Martina, and Taylor Esposito, who give this book a continuity and level of craftsmanship other similar series don't have or come close to having. So if you're perhaps a person who dismissed this as just another adaptation of a past property, or because you're not a Space Ghost fan, I'd advise giving it a shot because you may be surprised. At 100 is Faiza the Fighter, and this is one of the books I am grateful for my local library for, because if I didn't see it on Hoopla, I would have totally missed it otherwise. It's a quick one-issue story that never overstays its welcome about a young girl with big dreams of being a boxer, despite living in a world where that's frowned upon. Is this the most ingenious setup for a sports story? Of Of course not, but as often the case with sports stories, it's simply an avenue to tell a more important tale, and at the center of this comic is a father and daughter who share a special bond. That bond helps to make up for the rejection that the rest of the world tends to hand them. And this was my first time reading a comic by Despida Desputa, and I found her art style so welcoming and warm. Her flat colors and bold lines are able to give Faiza this level of vulnerability when you see the world getting to her, but also power when she takes that to fuel her dream. Landscape plays a major role within this story, and the picturesque mountains and snowy hillside give it a sense of place. By the end, it's very clear where the heart of the story is, and if you're looking for a charming read about a girl with a killer right cross, this is worth your time. At number 99, I have Roots of Madness. So 2025 gave us a breakout of a new publisher in Ignition Press. When a new publisher comes out, I do wonder what gimmick will they be using to separate themselves from others. Maybe they will only have variant covers. So far, no gimmicks for Ignition Press, rather than just focusing on genre stories that tend to have some horror elements. Series like Murder Podcast, which deserve recognition as well, but Roots of Madness turned out to be my favorite from them this year. This is written by Stephanie Williams, who is impressing me more and more as a writer this past year with series like Temporal, from Mad Cave, and even a book like Street Sharks that did not work for me, but clearly accomplished what it set out to do. Regarding Roots of Madness, though, it focuses on Edda, who is learning the traditions of her family, including creating medicines and other natural concoctions, but within those traditions are some darker secrets. What this leaves you with is a compelling story that gets into the heart of generational trauma and the struggle to both move past it and understand it. This is best demonstrated in scenes of the past that bring together all the different journeys that led to this moment. It was an effective way to give exposition regarding what Edda is set out to face without feeling like a massive info dump. Artist Letizia Cantanici is not someone who I was familiar with prior to this series, and certainly was impressed with what she brought. Her character work is rather elegant and terrifying when the horror kicks in. I would say if you enjoy the art style of something like Something is Killing the Children, I think you will dig what she brings. Cover artist Juliet Nika gave us some striking looking covers that do not just look great, but incorporate some key storytelling regarding what you're about to step into. So the inaugural year for both Roots of Madness and Ignition Press had a lot to offer. At number 98, I have the Hexiles. A big reason this series worked for me so well is because I was in the perfect headspace for it. One of my comic goals of 2025 was to read all 300 issues of the original Hellblazer run. I did not quite get there, but it did give me some Hellblazer fever, which is not something doctors have an antibiotic for, or at least the doctors covered by my insurance. Luckily, the Hexiles was a great way to treat it, or maybe expand upon it more now that I think of it, but you can quickly tell that this is very much inspired by the Hellblazer comics. It's basically, what if John Constantine was actually a bad person who cursed his children to save his own soul, and now those demons are coming to collect. The kids decide to join forces and fight back, as being the descendant of a magic user with connections to demons has given them their own set of specific powers. Cullen Bunn has long proven to be a master horror writer, so it's no surprise he's making this concept work. Artist Joe Picardo creates a dark and dreary world where escape appears impossible. Knowing that Vertigo is returning in 2026, if they were to bring back Hellblazer, DC would be smart to reach out to these creators. For now, I'm going to enjoy this run and hope we get more of it someday. At number 97, I have Only I Know the World is Ending and Getting Killed by a Rampaging Beast Only Makes Me Stronger. So yes, I will be including manga on this list with the caveat that I've only really started reading manga over the last few years. There's still plenty of major series that I'm not current with, so bear that in mind. So if you're wondering why your favorite manga series didn't make it, it may simply be because I'm way too far behind to determine how it fared in 2025. Did I include this series simply because the name is ridiculous and I enjoy saying it? No, but it was certainly a bonus. This is another addition to the list that I can thank my library for, as I picked it up knowing nothing about it and found myself enjoying it a great deal. I do not know if not knowing anything helped me, but I think it did, so if you're curious at all, maybe skip ahead a bit, because at first it feels like you're reading the apocalypse version of Groundhog Day. You have this character living out the same day again and again, being killed by an assortment of monsters, but it adds another wrinkle because it's not someone learning to find themselves through the ultimate repetition of life, rather a person living the life of a video game character, a video game they're able to control themselves. This adds a bit of strategy to the way taken down these massive monsters, and despite not being a gamer myself, found the challenges and how they overcome them captivating. The video game mechanics and the way they solve those problems were well developed and creative. If you're wondering if it bears any resemblance to that Ryan Reynolds vehicle Free Guy, my response would be a hard no. For one, it does not appear to be taking place inside an actual video game, for as much as I read at least, and it's not really a comedy at all. So despite being influences by other mediums, it remains its own thing, is able to get life out of a genre that is really well worn at this point. At number 96 is Hey Mary, published by Oni Press, written by Andrew Wheeler and artist Rai Hickman. Typically, being religious and being gay are not very copacetic. More often, religion is used as a tool to legitimize hatred towards those that are part of the LGBTQ+ community. The thing is, though, there are plenty of people who belong to both. What this does is show that it is not the tool, but how you use it. Although this is clearly not a true story, you can tell it comes from a very true place. You can feel the struggle the main character, Mark, is facing as he learns more about himself, and that discovery yields a major fear of rejection and shame. That then is counteracted with a cavalcade of historical figures that provide a different perspective to the one that he's been preached at from his entire existence. Information holds with it a great deal of power, as this shows it can shape your reality not only by what it leaves in, but what it takes out. What Andrew Wheeler and Rai Hickman do with this work is show to use information for good, yet also reminding us that to be comfortable with yourself, that is a journey only yourself can control. Others can provide direction. It is up to the person to land at that final destination. And at 95, I have Winging It, published by Scholastic. And if you've not noticed yet, this list will include all different types of books and all different shapes and sizes, designed for a multitude of ages. As this choice and previous entries indicate, it includes YA books. I mean, Scholastic is probably the biggest comic book publisher in North America right now, so this list would be incomplete without their presence. Plus, I have kids of my own and always looking for books for them to enjoy. Winging It is definitely a book I would give to my 10 and 6-year-old, as it does what good kid comics should do and approach difficult topics in a way that respects children's emotional intelligence. Similar to Faiza the Fighter, this too is a father and daughter story at the center. The main character, Luna's mother, passed away when she was very young, so it's been her and her dad ever since. That changes when they move to the East Coast and move in with her grandmother, who she does not know very well. Perhaps, though, this is a chance to learn more about her father, as she's spending more time with the person who raised her. What this does well is show how grief is challenging in all different shapes and sizes. Perhaps it leaves an emptiness due to a lost connection, or it can lead adults to make harsh decisions because avoidance is easier road to travel down than approaching challenging feelings. That's all wrapped in this endearing tale about a young girl learning to enjoy life and embrace her new reality. And at 94, I have Redbook. And for those not in the know, this is a spin-off of James Tynion IV and Michael Avon Oeming's Blue Book series. This too looks to recount real-life encounters with extraterrestrials, but specific instances that occurred in Mother Russia and China. It's a small miracle a book like this even exists. Docu-comics are common graphic novel form, but rarely do you find anything non-fiction released in the issue format. But reading this, I get a similar feeling that I did watching Unsolved Mysteries back in the day. If you were to play that theme song, the eeriness would be turned up to 11. But what works best with this series and the previous one is that it doesn't try to over-dramatize the event it's covering. There are a number of key stories, including mysterious deaths of hikers in the Russian wilderness and strange underwater encounters, and each is treated with the Joe Friday-like approach when it comes to sticking to the facts of the case. So how does it avoid being dull and boring? First, these cases are fascinating and ones I personally never heard about before. Mostly though, artist Michael Avon Oeming does a wonderful job giving life to these events. That includes a number of inventive sequences that allow for more interpretation than words. For example, a sequence where filing cabinets dominate the page like massive skyscrapers as people are lost in a maze of information, trying to find the details of the story that have been locked away. Staying true to the title, the color scheme here adds red as it's used as a very effective accent color. Not only does it represent the history being covered, but also works to amp up the tension in some of the more serious moments, furthering the proof that sometimes limiting the tools that you can use can greatly benefit you in the long run. At number 92 is Goobers, published by Vault Comics. It feels good putting a Vault comic on this list. They're a publisher I have great respect for and given so many great series throughout their existence, but for the last couple of years their output has majorly decreased. I'm not sure why exactly that is, but even though their quantity has declined, quality is still remaining. Goobers has that crazy energy of the Bass Midnight horror releases, one of the most impressive array of body horror that finds more and more ways to build upon itself. Writer Cody Ziegler has a strong sense of genre, and you see that in so much of his work, including this book. He knows how to learn from the tropes you would expect, but also find ways to expand upon them that keep you guessing. Ryan Lee is not an artist I am super familiar with, but he draws in a style here that gives everything a humor bent, so it does not get overtly grotesque. They're clearly trying to have a good time with all of this. It reminded me a lot of the approach that Rob Guillory takes with his work in comics like Farmhand, another great comic from this past year. There have been plenty of stories that take on the body snatchers idea and don't do anything new with it, and I'm glad this adds some meaning behind all the insanity. Also gives you characters that are immediately distinct and have their own voice, and does that rather quickly. So, in a world that has gone to hell, you have at least someone to cling on to. At number 92 is The Blood Brothers' Mother, published by Distillery. And you know what we don't get enough anymore in any medium? Westerns. I know the glory days of Westerns are long gone, but always happy to get another quality story within the genre. Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso are probably best known for the work within the crime genre. Exciting to see 100 Bullets is going to return in 2026. Of course, their magic doesn't have to be reserved for the noir genre, it works just as well within westerns. The first thing that comes to mind thinking back to the series were the color choices. Stark yellows and oranges, they give you the sense that you're inside that desert heat. Rustic, hot, and overwhelming. Sometimes the best thing about comics is that you can make it look like everything is happening at magic hour. The absolute dream of cinematographers everywhere. Risso's line work also creates characters that look like they lived one harsh life. I believe if you're quiet enough, you can hear the Ennio Morricone score echoing within these pages. Besides that, this is one brutal story. A revenge tale that makes you want to see these characters get what they deserve, but only to make you regret that once you see what happens. So if you're a person that likes things like the Man with No Name trilogy and wonder where those stories have gone, know you have this comic to look forward to. At number 91 is Exorcism Island, published by Comixology. Do I have another favorite creative team? Jordan Thomas has been one of my favorite writers over the last few years. Spoilers for this list, but this will not be the only time his name appears. One thing is clear, he knows how to work with great artists that have a style that enhances each story. I was a big fan of their Mugshot series, as it fit quite well into the hole left by series like Criminal. With Exorcism Island, they have joined forces yet again for a completely different type of book, one that exists firmly within the horror genre. Both of these series are tasked with how much color can impact the mood of a book. If you go back to Mugshots, you can see how blue is the dominant color, making it cool and sleek in its execution. Exorcism Island, however, is dominated by orange that represent the hellish reality the book lives in. The premise is right in the name, as the Catholic Church has taken the idea that made Australia into the country it is today, but instead of shipping convicts to an island, they're shipping those possessed in hopes that a conclave of priests can cure what ails them. Instead, similar to how kids feed off each other's chaotic energy in the backseat of a car, those demon-possessed individuals are making each other more powerful. To be fair, this is one of the few times that the Catholic Church had an idea that did not work out as intended, as long as you exclude the vast majority of human history. Jordan Thomas and Chris Matthews have sensibilities that work just as well in horror as it did in noir, and I like how this maintains some levity even when things are at their darkest and most twisted, and boy, do they get twisted. At 90, I have Los Monstros, published by Dark Horse. And if I were to give my comic book writer of the year for 2025, I would give it to James Robinson without a moment of hesitation. That's because despite being in the comic book world for literal generations, he came out with so many great series this year that gave the comic book world something it did not have, or at least it did not have in quite a long time. Was it also because I had a chance to speak with him at Baltimore Comic Con, and the joy for his current work was so infectious I could help not but buy in myself? Well, that didn't hurt. To once again spoil my own list, his name will be turning up soon enough. Two things I'm a fan of are the classic Universal monster stories and the noir genre. Now, putting two things you love together does not always come out great. Peanut butter and mayonnaise do not have the same components that make you want to see them together as one. Chicken wing and pizza, though, that's a match made in heaven. Los Monstros is the chicken wing pizza of comics. That's a pull quote if I've ever heard one. Jesus Marino's art style and Kaiche Diaz's colors create a world of shadow and mystery, exactly what you should have in a werewolf private investigator story, and that story is the right level of convoluted, where everyone is looking to stab you in the back for one reason or another. We only get a small taste of this world, so I would love it if they return to it again one day. I mean, who wouldn't want more chicken wing pizza? At number 89 is Free For All #1, published by Oni Press. With Free For All #1, Patrick Horvath had to do something that is difficult for any creator in any artistic medium. That is, follow up on a surprise success that came out of nowhere that was also your debut in the medium. So many have not been able to live up to the pressure, to never before seen level of expectations, and as you can see with Patrick Horvath, clearly he was capable, and yes, to once again spoil my own list, this will not be the only time you see his name on here. From what I understand, Free For All may have actually existed prior to the release of the much acclaimed Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, but its success helped this comic get published to a larger market. No matter when it was fully created, it helps that this is a one-shot that bears little resemblance to his previous work. Certainly the cover of a flailed head evokes similar feelings of a serial killer bear, but the story itself is much different. Existing in the world of science fiction, in the future, the richest of the rich are given a choice. Either give away half your money or defend that in combat. So yes, fiction with a capital F, based on this concept. Besides being a different genre, this was also a more action-based story, as we do get that combat the plot promised. I did not know if Horvath could draw well-executed, exciting action scenes, and now I know that is the case. So when you take his talents as a storyteller and work them into a pointed political commentary, you get one of the best works of the year. At number 88 is Tokyo Alien Bros, published by Viz Media. I really don't have a sense of what the general manga fandom thinks of certain series, and do wonder how much my taste matches up with the populace. I could see many not being a fan of this book, especially with the in-the-face way the first volume opens up, and it even gives Saga a run for its money when it comes to having a story with sexually explicit shocking imagery. I tend to find the phrase creator's lightly disguised kink to be overused, but it's hard to deny it here. If anything, disguise is doing a lot of work within that sentence. But to get past all that craziness, the reason it's here is because I generally really enjoy the story. It's a classic formula, the fish out of water, and all the hijinks that go along with it. In this case though, the fishes are aliens and have an even weirder infatuation with water. It's also meshed with another classic trope, the one of the outsider finagling their way into a society under false pretenses with the initial goal to destroy it, only to fall in love with that world and culture and change their mind about their original mission. Tropes can work well when well executed, and that's exactly what's happening here. You have sharp writing, quality jokes, and characters that go on to a believable emotional journey. Add in some intergalactic brotherly conflict, and all the formula pieces just work really well together. Number 87 is It Rhymes with Takei, published by Top Shelf. In 2019, George Takei was one of the writers of They Called Us Enemy, which told the story of his childhood growing up in an American concentration camp. While I do not think It Rhymes with Takei is on the same level as that book, it does show that George Takei has lived quite the life as an actor, activist, and simply as a person. This gets more into his life as a high school and college student, along with his time of trying to become a working actor. If you're a Star Trek fan, there are some good stories about his time on that show. Not that you need more reasons, but it will give you even more respect for someone like Nichelle Nichols. As the title would indicate, the focal point here though is George Takei coming to terms with his own sexuality and figuring out how to live in a world that was not ready to accept him. It is one of those comics that operates as a transparent look at one person's struggle, but also how much progress can occur in one person's lifetime. However, progress does not work in one direction, as a lot of regression has occurred in recent years. What these creators did was find a way to work against that pushback to ensure everyone is free to express who they really are. It Rhymes with Takei is not just a title, but a small act of rebellion that's represented within this book. At number 86 is The Great British Bump-Off, Kill or Be Quilt, published by Dark Horse Comics. John Allison and Max Urin just make good comics. After Giant Days, anything they do together, I will check out and have enjoyed everything from Wicked Things to the previous volume of this series. They certainly have a sensibility that's just not found often within comics, especially the monthly format. I think this improves upon the original run, even though it does not have much to do with the original setup. The first series, of course, was inspired by shows like the Great British Baking Show, and this smartly does not try to repeat that idea, rather take the same character and place her into an entirely new mystery. Both series work in large part because of the cartooning of Max Seren. Their character work is so strong, with loud body language and expressive faces that sell the comedy as well as the drama. Also, small inventive tidbits are thrown in, like a rising counter of damage when Chana's houseboat gets a life of its own. It is the mystery here so meticulously put together in ways that keep you guessing until the end, and the final reveal blows your mind? Not really. This gives you a similar feeling of watching those shows like Murder, She Wrote or Columbo, and it's not ashamed of that fact. These creators here are not trying to act like they are the smartest people in the room. Whether they're here to tell a story about characters you care about within a mystery that keeps you interested, sometimes the simplest goals are the most effective. At number 85 is The Moon is Following Us, published by Image Comics. Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossimo are two of my favorite artists, and both of them working on the same book is a treat. Daniel Warren Johnson drew the real-world scenes, and Riley Rossimo the dream sequences. Both of their styles have a very distinct look, which gave each setting a very specific feel. Daniel Warren Johnson has a tendency to drop an emotional hammer within his series, and I was waiting for that to occur with each issue. We got a couple making you think that, oh, we're safe. Then we get issue number 7 and something comes out of nowhere and we get yet another dark turn that recontextualizes everything that came before and after. With the story taking place in a dream world, the imagination is something else. You have people writing monsters, versions of a unicorn with a shark staff and a fox hand, and that's just one character. It's crazy, emotionally charged, and it kept you on your toes for the entire run as these parents try to save their daughter who will not wake up. My expectations were high going into this run, and it's a good thing when you're walking away not feeling disappointed. At number 84 is The Exorcism at 1600 Penn, published by IDW. I wonder what was in the air that made Hannah Rose May and Vanessa Del Rey want to do a comic about someone becoming possessed by a demon at the White House. To be fair, this does not resemble our reality in any major way from what I can tell, nor does it try to lightly disguise its characters as real-life people. Despite the setting, this is not super involved in politics of today. They're going for something a bit more universal and timeless. I always thought that Vanessa Del Rey was one of today's best artists when it comes to the horror genre especially, and that just continues to be the case. She stepped up her game even more with this incredibly ambitious page layouts within this book, full page spreads filled with a walk and talk sequences that would make Aaron Sorkin proud. Kudos to Letter Hassan for help guiding the eye during those sequences. Like many stories about exorcism, this is somewhat of a slow build. What I like about it though is that when doing this, they keep you guessing regarding what is really happening here. The characters here are strong, but with understandable flaws. So how do you do something new with an exorcism story? Well, you put it in one of the most important homes in all of the world, and suddenly the stakes are majorly raised. And number 83 is The Night Eaters Volume 3, Their Kingdom Come, published by Abrams Books. There is not a more underrated creative team in comics right now than Major Lee Liu and Sana Takata. Their series Monstrous, which has been going strong for a decade now, continues to be unlike any other fantasy book on the shelves. Not only did we get more of that this year, we also saw the conclusion of Night Eaters. I went back and reread the previous volumes, and it's been a year or two since the first two came out. That definitely enhanced the experience of seeing the story come to a close. It was a little strange, to be honest, as the first volume is so entrenched in the height of the COVID pandemic. It was like revisiting a very different time and place that feels very far away, but at the same time so close. This is a series that's a meshing of family drama with supernatural ideals of all-powerful beings, all powered by the beautiful art of Sana Takata. Not many people can draw art that is this insane with what happens here in a book that makes it so elegant and creepy within the same time. With this being the third volume, it's a bit hard to explain the plotline without spoiling the first two books. I will just say this series centers on a family that appears to be normal but has major connections to the supernatural world. In this conclusion, we saw a major struggle for power and world dominance. Now that battle has reached its climax. The graphic novel trilogy progressed quite nicely as the stakes and scope started small and intimate, but by the end grew to a worldwide level. At number 82 is The Well, published by Top Shelf. Leave it to dogs to best represent the doldrums of young adulthood. John Allen's The Well is a comic featuring anthropomorphic dogs that are stuck living normal human lives. Veronica is 24, trying to live on her own for the first time and dealing with all the problems that come with it. That is including untrusting boyfriend who's more interested in making music than being a responsible adult. She has a job that lacks purpose but pays the bills well enough. However, when Veronica walks down the wrong stairwell, she discovers something far more nefarious is going on in her lifeless office space. Allen's artwork is deceptively simple, like you would see in a classic newspaper strip for the modern era. With the 4:5 aspect ratio and use of 4-panel grid structure, it feels like a comic ideal for catching up on Instagram or other social media platforms. That's not to say it does not work well within physical form. In fact, it reads much better as you're able to see details that may be easier to miss on your phone in between all the noise social media brings. Despite the fact that these characters are dogs, it never really calls attention to that. No cheap jokes revolving around the way these characters interact, outside a sex scene or two, which is extra humorous because after a while you forget these characters are in fact dogs. Then that moment happens and your brain gets reminded regarding what you've been reading this entire time. The reason why it's so easy to forget is because John Allen has a really natural way of writing dialogue. Anyone who spent time in an office or went out to the bar after a mind-numbing day at work will find plenty to relate to regarding how these situations are approached. There's a good balance here in how it handles the drama in an intriguing way while never falling victim to becoming overwrought with melodrama. It's a heartwarming, very human story. I was reminded something of like Scott Pilgrim, not in the way the story is executed, but how you have this relationship drama that has this more fantastical element in the background that becomes a bigger part of the story as it progresses, eventually taking over. To be honest, I didn't need that part of the story, but when I got it, I understood why it was there, as it adds a grander mystery beyond just who's everyone sleeping with that day. So if you're looking for a breezy read that feels like an adult animated show that's never been made in comic book form, John Allen's The Well gives you plenty to enjoy. At number 81 is Doll Parts: A Lovesick Tale, published by Image Comics. With Doll Parts: A Lovesick Tale, it created a story that takes place in the early 2000s, but still very much speaks to the online culture we live in today. How kids can be isolated to the point that the only place they feel welcome is with total strangers on the internet. Luana Vecchio is a stellar talent and had full command of the story, showing how kids can be pushed and pulled in so many different directions, it can be impossible to know who you are and what you really want. So when someone offers affirmation, even in a faceless entity on the internet, it can lead to an unhealthy addiction that is almost impossible to overcome. The story follows Madeline, whose parents seem to resent her existence, which in turn leads to criticism regarding nearly any decision she can make. Madeline sees the world and what it can do to people and does not wish that upon herself. Luana Vecchio told quite the tale here, and it's utterly terrifying, but in a different way than most horror stories. She places you within the mind of a teenager, and you can understand the disconnect from the rest of the world around her, as it's a series of unrelenting dangers. Despite that, though, she continues to push forward despite those who wish her harm. This is Madeline learning the best way to avoid being a victim to the world around her and finding the power within herself to reject the monsters that wish to hold you down. This is not a story about a victim, this is a story about refusal. At number 80 is Surrounded, America's First School for Black Girls, 1832, published by NBM Publishing. I love when comics can open the door to a part of history I know nothing about, and such is the case with this story. Crandall versus the state of Connecticut was a case that I heard about in the past but didn't really know the context. Now this is clearly done in a narrative sense with the classic tagline, "I'm based on a true story," rather than being more of a graphic textbook explanation of the event. Clearly that means some fiction gets mixed in with fact, but also makes for a much more entertaining read. Stefan Furt's art is a clear indication of that fact, with a style that looks like a child's fairy tale come to life. Furt is quite the storyteller, as well as there's plentiful amount of pages within this text that have no words. Colors are fantastic, as well as a lot of flat colors are used to complement that simplistic style. I did get worried that this would be yet another white savior story, but it does avoid that trope for a number of reasons. For one, it shows that even those with good intentions can still hold prejudice they're not aware of, not to mention that not all events that push society forward are successes. Not to spoil history, but just because the law is on your side does not mean society is, and that is represented quite well within this comic. At number 79 is Pearl, published by Scholastic. I've read and watched so many stories and documentaries regarding World War II and its events, but this is the first time I've ever seen this perspective. Amy is a teenage girl living in Hawaii. Her parents were born in Japan and moved to the States prior to her birth, so she was raised there during her adolescence. Wanting to reconnect with her heritage she never really knew, she travels to Hiroshima to visit her family right before the events of Pearl Harbor that forever changed the world and her life. Amy finds herself a foreigner in her own land and a citizen of the country Japan was now at war with. Even if she wanted to be absent participant, she doesn't get that chance because her skills of speaking English have her enlisted in helping translate radio messages back from the States. Ironically though, those messages remain her only connection to her home. It is a fascinating setup that offers so much to dissect and think about, and rightfully it doesn't provide any specific answers. The oddity of this situation is presented, and the struggle of finding a form of identity in a world where everyone views you as a stranger. The title Pearl comes from her heritage, as her grandmother was once a pearl diver who would travel to dangerous depths to find the beauty nature created. Now she finds herself trapped within danger that she did not create, searching for something of equal value. Fitting, Christine Nori uses a color palette akin to a shiny pearl, with near exclusive use of light blue and whites to give this that shimmering design. This is a book of limited words, so it's up to her to give much of the life that she does. She excels at character emotion, especially since so much of the struggles Amy is going through are just shown on her face in quiet moments of contemplation. This is published through the Scholastic Graphics line, which tends to make books directed towards middle and early high school students. It informs regarding the state of the world at a time that raises so many challenging questions that don't have any exact answers. It is a book that yearns for deeper and meaningful discussions, and I hope it gets that. At 78, I have Tales of Paranoia, published by Fantagraphics. As someone who enjoys watching wrestling, I'm not usually a fan when a wrestler of advanced age that either comes out of retirement or comes back after some time off gets the "you still got it" chant from the crowd, mostly because it kind of sounds like a backhanded compliment. So let me be hypocritical for a moment, because reading through this, I thought, yeah, Crumb still got it. Now, with that being said, what Crumb has may not be what everyone wants. Crumb has faced his criticisms, and deservingly so, based upon his past actions. I understand those who wrote him off and continue to do so, but looking at this comic in a vacuum, he still remains one hell of a cartoonist with a voice all his own. What I found interesting is that the comic book store I bought this from mentioned how much of this seemed to resonate with their Gen Z and younger clientele. I was amazed at that at first, but as I read it, I could see why. For one, Crumb gets to the impact of anxiety like few others. He is an open book and well aware of all the voices that are in our heads regarding all the things that can possibly go wrong at any time. On an artistic standpoint, his ability with the pen still remains strong even in his 80s. The look of this is just as good as any issue of Zap during its height. In this comic, a lot of an old man yelling at a cloud. Yes, is some of that commentary heavy-handed? Certainly, but does it have some twist along the way as well that show Crumb may be more socially aware than you think? Yeah, actually. To recall another phrase I'm not the biggest fan of, they don't make them like this anymore. It's impossible to capture the underground energy of the 60s in 2025. This gets as close as anyone can. For those who do not join Crumb's work, I do not see this changing your mind in any way. If you're a person who was always curious about his work, this is a good window into what he has to offer, and may even hit harder since it touches upon issues you may be far more familiar with. And number 77 is Usagi Yojimbo 10,000 Plums, published by Dark Horse. When in doubt, Usagi Yojimbo. That's a big comic book motto of mine. What I mean by that is Stan Takei has been so consistent with Usagi Yojimbo run for over 40 years, it's always something you can rely on. So if I'm in the doldrums of the comic book world for some reason, I tend to return to Usagi to get me out of that funk. What's also great is that we continue to get new Usagi Yojimbo stories each year. This year was another stellar installment that has everything you want from this series, a tale that feels etched within time, about the dangers of not helping those that are in need, wrapped within a samurai adventure. I mention this nearly every time I talk about Usagi, but it's worth repeating. If you're an aspiring comic book creator, you need to be reading at least some of Usagi Yojimbo to see the power of getting fundamental storytelling right early and often. Stan Takei has been telling Usagi stories for 40 years and all within the same continuity. By normal comic book logic, that would mean everything would be far too convoluted for someone new to jump in on board, but that's not the case at all. You can start with this series or any other, and Takei will give you everything you need right away to understand what's happening. Personally, I started reading around issue 200 and only within the last few years went back to read the original run. it's always the perfect time to read Usagi Yojimbo, and of course, that includes now. And at number 76, and last for this video installment, Uncanny Valley, published by Boom Studios. Uncanny Valley is a good example of the challenge of ranking comics within a year, because if we're talking about this series as a whole, it would rank much higher, but within 2025, only 2 issues came out, so it felt harder to rank it above 76. Overall, this series taps into 2 things I rather enjoy: cartoons and comics. After a boy discovers he's part cartoon, he gets brought into this entire new world and becomes the central figure of a war of epic proportions. One of my favorite things about this series is how it plays with the language of comics and cartoons, using those classic tropes of how you can't fall if you don't look down, or drawing a tunnel on the side of a mountain to magically walk through it is a great part of the storytelling. Similar to how Roger Rabbit, we see what happens when human and cartoons interact. Unlike Roger Rabbit, though, this doesn't get to use licensed characters, and you would think that would be the death nail. Like when you were a kid and your parents don't want to spend money on G.I. Joe, so you get the generic Soldier Man from the 99-cent store. With Uncanny Valley, though, you don't get that level of disappointment. For one, the characters are so close, you know exactly what they're going for, or they use it as an opportunity to be creative, like having a character who is a kung fu warrior that also can transform into a buggy. Have to also give major credit to David Watcher, who's the artist here, and has the hard task of trying to mesh 2 very different styles within the same panels. It's amazing how well these worlds mesh together. I can only imagine the difficulty of trying to bring so many of these different elements to life, and the combination of talent and imagination, they make it all work. That is plenty from me for now. Look out shortly, as I'll be dropping video 2, going through numbers 75 through 51.